Hello friends, Oculus Temps here. Today we're playing Fear and Hunger 2 Termina. This is the sequel, obviously, to Fear and Hunger 1. Classic trigger warnings, there's a lot of graphic stuff in this game, so flashing lights, so if that stuff, doesn't jive with you, probably don't want to watch this. So, let's start with a new game. There we go. Getting a Persona vibe already. Choose character, class ex-soldier. 18 info. Having fought in war since he was 13, ex-soldier excels at range combat and has a great aim with most firearms. I really read that as like lost an arm at some point. 18 occultist. 18-year-old info. The occultist focuses on the creative use of the otherworldly powers. While not as strong with harmful and offensive skills, her abilities are no less impressive when used properly. Doctoro. 28. Looks roughly the same age, same facial features. The doctor's skill set is mainly focused in curing different status elements and analyzing the possible weaknesses in enemy anatomy. Listen, I learned enough from Fear and Hunger 1. Go for the sacks of skin, in quotes. Mechanic, 27. Nice overalls. The mechanic is adept at crafting her own makeshift weapons and traps. Along with mechanical skill, she also understands more complicated machinery. Yellow Mage, age 32. These were enemies in the first one. Contrary to other priests' beliefs, Yellow Mages don't dedicate their lives to worship. Yellow Mages use otherworldly power only to their own benefit and to further their agenda. You literally just fought this game? Dope, dope. Botanist, 20. The botanist's knowledge covers a wide variety of plants and herbs. You can create mixtures with strong healing properties, or alternatively, she can use her knowledge to create potent poisons. Thug Boxer, age 31. Info/life. Life in an underground boxing ring has taught the boxer how to deal with opponents barehanded. Boxer sells gotta pick the JoJo-looking character. I assume this is the Thug Boxer, right? And journalist, 26. Having covered wars, coups d'etats, and other disasters, the journalist has picked up various skills that help her survive. Persuasion skills. Oh, God. I love the diplomacy. I love diplomacy so much. I like botany. Yeah, she's in a wheelchair. I was thinking about making comments about, like, so can her limbs get crippled? Like, her legs get crippled like other characters? Or does the chair just get disabled? The mechanic's cool, too. I can pick a black mage, or I can pick a... I'm gonna go Black Mage. I'm gonna go Black Mage or Yellow Mage. Like Final Fantasy Black Mage. I'm not trying to make some type of, joke. Let's transform and roll out. Again, not another wheelchair joke. I know a bit about her. To be a bit of a spoiler free, her leg limbs are pretty useful for punch bags, but she can be hit out. Yeah. Yeah, I assume her torso is not invincible. Fear and Hunger mode, easier, mass. Oh my god, that's such a pretentious mode title. Let's try Fear and Hunger mode. Let's go with that. Give me the full text adventure. Damn straight. The soothing sound of the rail tracks. You're not used to such peaceful and tranquil atmosphere. You can't help but let your mind wander. You reminisce what has led you to this point in your life. Great character pick too. Pog. You were born and raised in the raging heats of Abyssonia, the continent with a long war embedded with chaos and warring factions. Those fools, the people around you wage wars over ancient disputes and grudges started by long-gone ancestors. But this is how it had always been. The people of Abyssonia held ancestors and their spirits on a godlike pedestal. But I strive to become my own godlike entity instead of my ancestors. I will become the pedestal. Oh wait, that's not what's written down. But it's not like it was any better in the north, in the continent of Europa. These fools worshipped ancient deities that none of them had ever seen with their own eyes. And they certainly had their disputes as well. A great war after another. What's worse, their disputes didn't stay within their borders. They dragged everyone into their mess. They had their eyes set on Abyssonia now because of its strategic position in securing an access to oil and other raw materials from the east. It was only a matter of time before their troops would march on your land. Wait, am I talking to myself, or is the narrator talking to me? Because I'm reminiscing, right? About my past? You were not going to die because some faceless puppeteers chose to focus their magnifying glasses on your home country this time. Despite your young age, you decided to leave. I'd like to point out our character is 32. Maybe they departed earlier than this? Your siblings and mother would mourn your departure. They want you to have something to remember them by. Take your family, Chalk Chalk. Take your father's memento, Soulstone. Take family? You took the Chalk Chalk with you. You had considered yourself as successfully dead inside, not swayed by emotions. But it took a lot of effort to convince yourself that you wouldn't miss your family. You still obviously had weaknesses to weed out. Jesus Christ, that's so edgy. That's so edgy. You were dead on the inside, but you would still miss your family. You headed to the City of the Sun, Amon, to educate yourself on spiritualism and religion. You were no slouch physically, but you always considered your intellect to be your true forte. And just like that, you were accepted as an apprentice after some preliminary tests. At the same time, news about the Great War closing Abyssinian borders were all they could talk about on the radio. Amon was far from the borders and would probably remain safe for a good while, even after a war broke out. You figured you'd still have plenty of time to learn at the temple and leave the country before it was too late. At the Temple of Amon, you were given a choice to learn various different schools of spiritualism. Learn of worship in Europa, learn magic from Eastern sanctuaries, learn methods of your home country. Well, if I remember anything from the Eastern sanctuaries in Fear and Hunger 1, that would give us destruction magic. And what better way to become a god in our own right than to learn destruction magic? You learned a pyromancy trick. Okay. You're talented and praised for your quick learning at the temple. But that came as no surprise to you. You knew you were smarter than most of those old geezers. They only possessed knowledge you wanted. Once you had that, they served no purpose to you. The more time you spent at the temple, more pathetic the priests of Amon started to look in your eyes. Religion in general started to look dubious too after examining how the world functioned. Most religious doctrines were molded to accommodate the current ruling class. Religion was used as a mere tool to control masses more than anything else. Dedicating your life to worship would equal dedicating your life to kings and queens of the time. You had left your home because you didn't want to die fighting someone else's war. Why would you waste your life serving someone else in turn? This time you found an old scroll for one of the many Amon libraries. The scroll mentioned an old sect of magical practitioners originating from Eastern Sanctuary whose worldview seemed more appealing to you. Yellow Mages differed from your typical priests. Instead of dedicating their lives to worship, gods existed for them. Their first was to be harnessed to further one's own personal growth and agenda. Instead of finding order from the commandments laid out by the older gods, Yellow Mages reveled in chaos. Chaos was the natural state of the world. Chaos was the natural state the world would return to time and time again. So why even try and force anything else? You quit the Temple of Amon and decided to head east in pursuit of these Yellow Mages. Traveled beyond your home continent, ultimately finding yourself at the narrow streets of Eastern sanctuaries. You got acquainted with the local temples. Even they had adopted the worship of Almer as their main religion. It's the god from the first game. Eastern sanctuaries were no better than the temples of Amon in that regard. If anything, religion was even more prevalent there, and dictated the way people were to live and die. You were looked down upon by the scholars and religious leaders of the area because of your very public opinions. That didn't bother you. You knew better. In time, your conviction convinced the facets you wanted. Okay. That's a weird sentence, I think. You were approached by a group of traveling mages who wore colorful attires. The Yellow Mages that were still around in this day and age were reduced to small, separate groups wandering around the world to study all fields of the otherworldly. The group saw the potential in you and offered a place among them. You liked what you heard and decided to join the wandering group. What did you specialize in? Alright, so basic techniques and advanced techniques. I'm gonna go with basic techniques to try to round out our pool of just generic jazz. You learn La Danse Macabre, the traditional dance of the Yellow Mages that channels otherworldly powers close to you. Okay. Your path of learning and self-growth knew no end. Your travels brought you to a small border town in eastern sanctuaries. There you met a curious person, Hadil Azif, a self-proclaimed wizard from the Far East. Despite his pretentious appearance, his family name Azif was well known and even somewhat feared in certain occult circles, which gave his claims at least some credibility. He was gathering a group of adventurers to accompany him on a perilous quest. He had inherited a map from his late grandfather that was supposed to lead him to the infamous dungeons of Fear and Hunger itself. Let's go! This place used to be a noteworthy location of pilgrimage for many aspiring mages and priests in the distant past. The Yellow Mages he had spent time with previously told ominous tales about the dungeons as well. Initially, you dismissed Azif's talks only to be haunted by the most brutal nightmares on the following night. Something was calling for you. You had to witness the place yourself. Okay, initially you dismissed his talks, or dismissed him, then you got haunted by brutal nightmares on the following night, and then the dungeon was calling you to it. You joined the motley crew of adventurers Azif had managed to put together and travel through war-torn Europa. Most of the crew quit halfway to Rondon because of how difficult it was to cross borders during those chaotic times. The closer to the destination you got, the more feverish your dreams became. The remaining members of your ragtag fellowship were visibly sick from stress and otherworldly pressure that had befallen on you the moment you set out on your quest. The breaking point was the day you were to finally arrive at the dungeons. A heavy fog joined your camp and made navigation impossible. Using a compass did no good, as the thing was just spinning circles wildly. Distant growls and howls created unrest. Not that there was any need for that, as superstition and constant misfortune had already convinced your fellow travelers that this trip was cursed from the start. Your companions panicked and scattered to the mists, as if himself had been sick from constant nightmares for half the trip already. You left him curled up in the fetus position in his tent and ventured forward on your own. After walking for a while, you started to make out something behind the thick white veil. The mist revealed structures of some kind. You got to a set of old ruins, or they looked more like a measly pile of rubble now. If it wasn't for the dreadful aura emanating from deep within, you can tell there was anything remarkable about this place whatsoever. Near the main entrance arc, there was a makeshift archaeological site with tents and digging equipment. The site looked abandoned. On the other side, there was a side entrance to the dungeons with stairs leading to the darkness below. Examine the tents, head to the main entrance, head to the side entrance. Makeshift, let's examine the tents first, right? If this is a choose your own adventure thing. Probably isn't, but I'm going to do the tents first. The archaeological site seemed relatively new, maybe a couple years old at tops. There were no signs of people. Whoever had set it up had abandoned the place too. All the documents and report were written in Bremen, so you couldn't tell exactly what these people were looking for. This might have been just a regular archaeological excursion that stumbled into their certain doom unknowingly. If these truly were the dungeons of fear and hunger, then even in their current state they would surely swallow unprepared tourists whole. Near the main entrance arc, there was a makeshift archaeological site. Okay, so it does now choose your inventory. You know, looked abandoned. Side entrance, upstairs. Let's do side. That's what I did on my playthrough. Cautiously, you walk down the slippery stairs, only to find a cave-in. The hallway had totally collapsed, and there seemed to be no way around it. Buried under the rubble, there was an old skeleton in a medieval leather armor, crushed under a ton of rocks. You didn't want to suffer the same fate with the skeleton, so you returned back. Near the main entrance arc, there was a makeshift. Yep. Main entrance. The moment you step inside the dungeon walls, you felt immense, otherworldly pressure. You understood that the place would drain any normal person to the brink of madness and starvation in a matter of mere hours. You had to be efficient about this. Even if the day was still bright, the darkness seemed to suffocate all light, and you could barely see anything ahead of you. You lit up a torch. You stood at the vestibule of the dungeons. To the left, you saw a doorway leading to what seemed like a kitchen. There was a small room with old wooden furniture in front of you, and to your right, there was a closed door. Alright, so I think we probably have to be fast. And if we aren't fast during this... Oh, we're getting some old Fear and Hunger 1 tracks. Check the door to the left. Kitchen. With old... Let's go check the door out. Tried opening the door, but didn't budge. Consider pressing it, but then you heard faint noises coming from the other side. You could have sworn it sounded like something breathing heavy and alive was moving slowly towards the door. You had heard rumors of this place, and you definitely didn't want to confirm whether there was any truth to these horror stories or not. Backed away from the door. Room had an old wooden desk in front of a partly rotten flag that hung on the wall. The flag was that of Old Rondon. The opposite wall had half-empty bookshelves facing towards you. Behind a small pile of rubble, you saw a wooden chest covered in cobwebs and dust. Let's go for the bookshelves. The few books that were still left were all in terrible condition. None of them looked interesting, but behind a large encyclopedia of torture you found an old wine vial. Ooh, wine! Suddenly you heard loud banging and screeching coming from the entrance hall. Adrenaline was rushing through you as you ran back to see what was causing the noise. The closed door was jolting from its hinges. Something big was trying to force its way through the door. Whatever it was created inhuman guttural sounds between its swings at the door. Ooh, we could wait and see what it is. I'm gonna hide. You checked the room for any good spots to hide in and decided to crouch behind a bookshelf. The place gave you a good vantage point while hiding you in the shadows. The door crashed open. You saw a dark silhouette of a gigantic malform being pushed from the open doorway. The creature made gurgling noises as it slowly wandered into the kitchen. Used his chance to sneak past the thing to the dark corridor where it first came from. Only the creature had gone used to the darkness as it sensed you the moment you got out of your hiding spot. You charged to the unknown darkness without a second thought. You ran as fast as you could, creating distance from the malformed beast with each step. You couldn't see much in the darkness, but a door frame that had light shining through its cracks caught your attention. You tackled the door open and stumbled to an overgrown courtyard. Quickly glancing back at the dark corridor, you noticed that the beast was nowhere to be seen. You figured the last rays of the setting sun kept it at bay. You took a breather and walked slowly across the yard. The grass had taken a sickly, yellowish color, and the setting sun created ominous shadows as its rays hit the lone gallows standing at the center of the enclosure. So I think this is where you can jump down the well. As you manage to focus your thoughts, you realize that there was an additional voice echoing in your head. Something or someone was calling you from the depths of this forsaken fortress. There was something very curious about this echo. You needed to find its source. Not like you had a choice but to delve deeper as the sun was rapidly setting down, stripping you from the last barrier that kept the murderous beast hiding in the shadows. The courtyard led to another door to the darkness. You pushed forward. You were at the foyer of the dungeons. The hall was huge. To your left was a lavatory? Lavatory? To your right was a long corridor leading to total darkness. Before you was a large stairway up. Go to the lavatory. Torch lit up a row of grimy, old toilet seatings. Old blood stains were mixed with what looked like semen. You wondered how and why you knew such an exquisite little detail. So I'm pretty sure jumping in the toilet hole will kill me, and I think investigating it'll make me vomit. So we're just gonna return. Let's do the corridor. Your torch slowly pushed away the darkness as you advanced towards the unknown. The further you got, the stronger the echo inside your head became. You couldn't make out the words clearly, but this was definitely the right direction to head. A larger room opened up behind a set of rusty iron bars. Your torch revealed human-like figures that stood just beyond the radius of light. Upon reaching inspection, you noticed that these figures were medieval iron maidens, human-shaped torture devices that had seen practical use, judging from the old stains that had formed from the seeping blood of their victims. You can die during this first section. I feel you can. I feel like this is something that's possible. I don't know for sure though. The room had numerous other torture devices as well. Most of them would probably be inoperative in this day and age. Among them, you saw an old reinforced chest at the back of the room. You saw a corridor leading to the cells. And at the back of the room, yeah, okay. Let's check the chest. The chest looked old. It might as well have been medieval for all you knew. As you tried opening it, you realized the lock was still fully functional. You couldn't open it without a proper key. You felt a cold draft run across the chamber. The draft seemed to be guiding you towards the dark corridor at the end of the room. Sure. Actually, foyer. You're at the foyer, large as all. Let's do the stairway. A white stairway led to an old Almerian sacrificial altar with a skeletal crucified to it. Next to the altar there was a side path leading deeper inside the fortress. Let's examine the altar. The altar was a typical ritual crucifix used to worship Almer, the Ascended One. A sacrifice would be put on the cross and their blood would slowly be drained for days to come. Traditionally, such rituals are used for protection. Almer would look after the immediate surroundings for as long as the blood was running down the cross. The last sacrifice this cross saw must have been the skeleton. There was no blood dripping from the cross anymore, so no protection from Almer either. Check the side path. The side path was a narrow corridor, crudely made from misshapen bricks and stones. It looked like the floor had collapsed at certain points, but you were able to hop over the trench with ease. A large room opened up before you. The room stood out with its finer decor, spiral floor tiling, and its many bookcases covering the walls. The southern corner of the room had a small doorway shrouded in darkness. The north end corner was more dilapidated with its caved-in ceiling and all. There's just the bookshelves. A Silver Dead Knight. Hey Reckless. Hope you I will. I hope you enjoyed as well. Most of the books that were still left had been growing mold for hundreds of years, but there were a handful of manuscripts that appeared surprisingly new. Like Skin Bible Grogroth, Skin Bible Skin Bible Sylvian. Um, hmm. So we have one pyromantic trick, and we learned the dance, macabre, le dance macabre. You're playing Darkest Dungeons too. Cool, cool. Is it as grindy as the first one? Uh, let's just go full on Black Mage. You got Skin Bible, Grogroth. The manuscripts all seem to be part of a bigger compilation, and you would have loved to have all of them with you, but you had a job to do, and you couldn't burn yourself with too much extra luggage. A large room opened up before you. The room stood out with its fine decor. Yeah. Bookshelves. Check the doorway. Small room and revealed a one desk with drawers, a carpet. It was from Eastern sanctuaries, judging by the patterns and partially eaten corpses that seemed to be part of the archaeological expedition. I said it is much better progression system for its grind. It's more of a roguelike feel to it now than just a pain simulator of terrible. Yeah, I played like 30 hours of Darkest Dungeon 1 during its early access, and the game was cool, but I kind of put it down, and then kind of when I saw like what the end game looked like, it's like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Like, okay, so maybe I'll take a look at some reviews, because I know a lot of the viewers of my channel are interested in that game based off YouTube analytics. Search desk. The desk was trashed. Someone must have searched the desk. Most of the valuables had been looted long time ago already. Opening a drawer revealed only old and dusty letters of no importance. The bottom drawer, however, seemed to be stuck. Let's force it open. You kicked the drawer a couple of times and managed to force it open. A lucky coin rolled out of the drawer. Faint whining and moaning could be heard from the partially eaten archaeologist. The corpse was trying to get to its feet. As it stumbled, a group of keys fell from its lap. You picked up the prison keys. Slowly, one step at a time, the ghoul approached you with its mouth stretched unnaturally open. Attack with your staff. Hurting on it. Ignore it and return to the foyer. DD2 is much better. I'd say they changed it a lot better this time around, especially for the overall feel of multiple runs. I wasn't much of a fan of DD1, but you love DD2 now. Cool. Alright, well maybe I'll run a dono goal for it after I got some RGB lights. Because it seemed right, it's still kind of pricey. Alright, I'm gonna try to run. Now, I would say run my ass away and return to the foyer. I don't like ignore it. I don't like that phrasing. You backed away from the ghoul, yet the ghoul kept on following you. You cautiously hopped over the collapsed floor in the middle of the corridor, leading to the library. The creature was not as agile and face planted on the ground as it tripped on the rubble. The ghoul was waist deep in the trench, unable to climb back up. Desperately, he tried reaching for you, but with his blood-soaked hands. The whines and growls turned into agitated shrieks as it furiously tried to snatch you. It looked like the creature was stuck. You figure you best just leave the area for now and explore elsewhere. Alright, we got a coin. And keys. We just did stairway. That was the stairway, so dark corridor. Iron Maidens. You can open it without a proper key. Check the dark corridor. Loud creaks and groans could be heard behind you. Something big had just entered the foyer. You figured it must be the malformed archaeologist from before. The sun must have set, which made it possible for the creature to advance through the courtyard. The creature must have had your scent, as his footsteps clearly closed in on you at a rapid pace. You had to act fast. The corridor that opened up was a long one with multiple cell doors covering each side. At the end were large bars sealing a staircase. Only a rusty lock stood in your way towards the deeper dungeon. So we're not going to the torture chamber. With multiple cell doors covering. At the end were large bars sealing off a staircase. I feel if I go to investigate the cell doors, I'm gonna get beat up and punished. Because this, like, they made a point, like, it's on your tail, right? Like, so we're gonna check the gate at the end of the corridor and try to get out. You heard the creature trash the nearby torture chamber. He was right on your heels. You couldn't see him in the darkness, but you could sense his intense hatred homing in on you. The gate was locked with a reinforced lock. You tried to remain cool as you hoped for the prison keys to work. The beast was already charging towards you as you opened the gate and slipped inside, only seconds before the mauled creature smashed against the bars. Violently, the creature tried to reach you while making low grunting noises from his swollen, meaty, sweaty, vascular throat. The bars and gate seemed to hold the beast for now. You didn't want to stay and find out whether the thing would eventually break in. Instead, you took the stairs deeper to the darkness. The thought crossed your mind. If darkness had twisted these poor sods to become mindless beasts, would the same fate await you if you stayed in the dungeons for long enough? The stairs became sticky from old gore and blood the deeper you got. The air was stale and had a rotten smell to it. I feel you could have just said the air was stale and rotten, you know? Because then you think more about it, right? And you kind of... The voice inside your head got louder. You couldn't make sense of any of the words, but it was definitely calling for you. Deeper. You had to go deeper. That much was clear. Well, if they want me to go deeper, I'll go deeper. You entered a huge chamber full of partially buried skeletons and rotting corpses laying about. The ground had a thick layer of dried blood and filth which had accrued around the chamber walls over the years. Each step you took echoed to dizzying heights. You couldn't see the chamber ceiling. The walls just rose up forever to the darkness. There were 2 staircases in the chamber. One led to the ground level you had just escaped, while the other led to lower levels. In the middle of the chamber, there was a rather new-looking wooden contraption. Excellent. Good, good. Listen. Listen to my description of throats. And the dungeon telling me to go deeper. So, 2 staircases and one lead to the ground level you had just escaped, while the other led to the lower levels in the middle of a relatively new wooden contraption. Alright, we're gonna go up. We're going full explore. You walked up the stairs. The screams of the malformed archaeologist got louder and louder until you saw this thing still banging on the gate relentlessly. The gate hinges were starting to get loose. It seemed like the creature could have broken it at any moment. You decided to head back down while you still could. Okay, you know, I don't know. It was kind of nice there. What if we, examine the pile of the dead bodies? Most of the bodies had been decaying and decomposing for hundreds of years. Some bodies looked fresher than the others, while some were reduced to bare skeletons. The ludicrous amount of corpses did raise questions about the purpose of this chamber, but there was no one around to answer those questions anymore, so you just took everything at face value. Examined the contraption. You didn't notice the gaping hole at the center of the chamber until you got close and the torch lit up the surroundings. The wooden contraption had been built as a freight elevator of sorts, lifting and lowering items and people if necessary. So if we're so in theory we could be in the mines where there was the lifting thing, and that's how you got into the Groth orgy pit. But I don't think this is it, because I think we're still in like the proper dungeon, like the building. The contraption itself stuck out. Oh wait, is this the elevator we take to the mines? The contraption itself stuck out just by not being stained with blood and filth like everything else. Judging by some of the equipment around, the elevator must have been used by the same archaeological expedition team that set up the tents outside. Or it's a new thing and not everything is from the first game. You could have used the contraption yourself too if you had some rope with you. Oh, maybe I'll ooh, maybe if I checked the cells I could have got ropes. I will warn Termina is not the same as with the first one. There's a lot more ways to die, and even time isn't on your side. Poggies, poggies. So, caution and speed. Take the stairs down. The stairs leading down were sticky with the grime, like everything else in that chamber. A cold draft moved you along to the chasm that awaited you at the bottom. A giant underground ravine opened up before you. Even your torch couldn't properly light up the area. There were iron grid platforms suspended above a seemingly bottomless chasm. The platforms were mounted on cavern walls and linked together with a shaky-looking bridge. The side you were on had a few individual prison cells in a row that awaited on the other side of the bridge for shadow and darkness. Okay, yeah, so I think this is the prison cell area where we had the giant serpent statues. Let's examine the ravine. The grid platforms looked old and rusty. The platforms gave worrisome creaks as you walked on them. The fact that parts of the platform had already collapsed didn't exactly reassure you of their condition. Hadn't already, there's an extra space there, I think. A giant underground ravine opened up before you. Even your torch couldn't properly light up the area. There were iron grid platforms, yeah. The prison cells. But all of them appear locked. Some of the locks were too rusty to function properly anymore. There appeared to be no way inside the bars. Not that you missed anything important. The torchlight revealed just regular prison utilities like piss buckets, chains, and a couple of skulls belonging to previous residents. A giant yeah. Check, walk. Alright, let's walk. You cautiously walked up to the bridge. Just putting some weight on the thing causes a couple of nuts and bolts to fall down to the endless steps. You braved across it. The bridge felt like it was going to collapse at any moment, but somehow it remained together. The side of the ravine was more or less identical to the one where you just came in. There were 3 cells in a row. At the end of the platform, there was a corridor leading away from the ravine to solid ground. Back to prison cells. They were all locked. One in particular caught your attention. There was a huge naked creature inside. Its features looked human, but the person must have at least been 2.5 meters tall, if not more. It should be a period, right? Not a comma. The upper body of the thing was shrouded in darkness. For a moment, you thought the creature was still breathing, but you figured it must have been a flickering torch. Must have been just a flickering torch creating illusions, surely. Oh yeah, surely, right? Like, I'm already being chased by a giant monster. I've seen a zombie. I'm gonna delude myself that, oh no, there's not another monster that's breathing in this cell. Come on, come on. You walked away as quietly as possible, regardless. Cells, corridor. Yeah, in the corridor. The corridor took you to a small intersection. To your left, there was a doorway to a small room. To your right, the corridor continued deeper to the darkness. Check the small room. The room looked like it had once belonged to an army officer. There were numerous weapon racks in the room positioned next to an empty shelf. At the back end of the room, there was a wooden desk with an impressive-looking leather recliner behind it. Behind the desk, you noticed a small cast iron chest and what seemed like a rusty lever. Oh, hello, Black Mage 665. Did you also hear the summons of the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger? Or did the bell icon notification on YouTube awake you? Let's check the weapon racks. There were a few wooden swords and spears still left on the rack. It looked like there might have been more, but looters had probably taken everything that looked half decent and valuable. One of the swords wasn't complete rubbish, and one of the spears appeared to be surprisingly good. You couldn't carry both around, but you didn't want to over-encumber yourself either way, after all. Like spear, sword, spear. You heard distant chains rustle by the chasm. Seems like the small commotion caused by explosion reached the ears of someone or something. Army officer, blah blah blah, leather recliner. Let's check the desk. Or chest. The chest had a thick and durable looking lock. It must have been just that too, as it had survived the test of time and undoubtedly a myriad of looters. So we're doing our flashback to dictate our past. So currently our character is in the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger from the first game, and we're looting through it, kind of choose your own adventure style. Yeah, so on the train ride we're like going through it all, but we're also deciding our backstory. You tried forcing it open, both no luck. If all the thieves from past several hundred years had given up on the chest, it would have been very unlucky. Very unlikely that it was you who would have finally been able to break it. Loud creak echoed from the ravine. The dungeons were dead silent, apart from the small ruckus caused by you going through the officer's room. Whatever still lived in the darkness could hear you loud and clear. Okay, we're gonna have to mess something up probably, so let's just get our full loot and then we fight. The desks and its drawers had been ransacked long ago already. Instead, you tried looking for things that were less obvious to common thieves and treasure hunters. You examined the bottom of the desk and found a hidden trapdoor. A pipe and torch full of tobacco fell from the hidden compartment. You heard an ear-piercing screech. It sounded like a cell door was just forced open. Steady scraping sounds closed in on you as you felt a terrifying presence advance in the darkness. Okay, well let's hide. Let's hide behind the desk. And try... Alright, we hid. Try to get a decent vantage point as the scraping noises grew louder and louder. A huge humanoid creature entered the room. The thing was naked, revealing its abnormally muscular and scarred physique. Its left arm was missing, replaced with what looked like a long pole or rod full of thorns and other sharp projections. No, not Crowmaller, not Crowmaller. This isn't fair. I killed you. I killed you. The most striking feature, however, in this abomination was its head. The creature had a head of a crow. Dun dun dun. And it was not just a mask, the feathers were growing down its neck too. Its empty glaring eyes seemed to stare right through you from the darkness of the doorway. The crow gave a loud caw that was mixed with a deep resonating growl of an anguished man. This was all the warning you got as it charged straight at you. The creature swung furiously at you with its left mauler arm. I will cast Hurting on it. You didn't even have time to start chanting the spell as the mauling arm crushed you against the floor. The creature knew perfectly well how to utilize the dreadful weapon as its thorns and spikes scraped the skin of your back. You're surprised by the mercy shown as the crow finished you quickly with just one additional swoop that broke your spine. Looks like your journey ended before it could even properly begin. I knew it, I called it. You can die in the thingy. So if you've enjoyed the stream this far, click like and consider subscribing for more gaming goodness. We're going to be doing a little Fear and Hunger 2 in 1 still, and you know, maybe some other jazz. Yeah, so altruism is gone. We can die in the tutorial. I'm gonna go through it way quicker on the next time. Let us begin again.